So this video is going to be a little different. As some of you guys know, before I started doing whatever it is I do now, I was a career auto mechanic for many years. I try to stay away from cars as much as I can nowadays. I kind of put that career behind me, and sometimes you get burned out. But every once in a while someone needs some help, and I can do this standing on my head. Now I'm new to this whole video thing, and I figured I'd take advantage of this situation and put another one under the belt, get a little more practice, and work on it some more. This car here's got a starter problem. Now removing the starter from this particular car can be a whole video on its own, and that's not what this one's about. So let me get the starter out of here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, let me try to explain what's going on here. So the starter isn't actually bad. What's bad is the little Bendix fork. So your battery positive connects directly to this terminal here. This terminal here connects directly to the motor. And you have a smaller terminal in here that when you turn your ignition key to the start position, you get 12 volts to here. And basically this whole unit here is a relay. It's called a solenoid, but it's basically a relay. So when you energize this, there's a coil inside here that moves a T-bar up against these two terminals here, so it connects your battery from here to here, which goes directly to the motor, and it spins the motor. So at the same time, because there is a movement on that T-bar, on the other end there's a plunger that connects to a fork, and somewhere in the middle there's a pivot on the fork, and that fork moves with the T-bar. And since there's a pivot, this end of it moves in this direction, and that's what engages your Bendix into the flywheel. Until you let off, then it pulls back in. There's a return spring in there. So the fork is broken. There's nothing wrong with the motor other than that little plastic fork. Now we could buy a new starter. They are expensive. They're, for a good OEM one, you're almost $400. If we had to, we could do that, but it's kind of foolish when the only thing wrong is the fork. From Hyundai, right at 12 bucks after taxes, you can get this little fork that goes in the starter. This is how common this problem is. There's also a packet of grease and some instructions and 2 new bolts for your solenoid. Alright, I want to start taking this apart here so we can get down to that fork. One thing that you want to do, there's a couple of bolts here in the back of the body that go through the brush holder that connect all the way up to the bracket, as they call it. So you want everything when you go back together to be indexed properly. So what I do when I take a motor apart, this is kind of standard practice. Make a couple of alignment marks. I'm going to do the same on the brush holder, and I'm also going to do the same on the solenoid. Next thing I'm going to do is take this nut off to remove the brush terminal from the solenoid. So we've got the solenoid disconnected from the motor as far as that wire goes. So we have a couple of Torx bolts. I believe they're T20. That's easy enough. We'll just take those out. Alright, so you could pull this apart, and there's half of that fork, And of course, you know, this plunger, all this comes apart. But we're going to set that for now, and then we'll take the body off of there. Got those bolts loose. We're going to have to do some cleaning, obviously. Now, as far as this little gear reducing planetary deal goes, I'm going to make some, obviously, silver marks, and then we'll pull that off. And there's our other piece. As far as this piece goes, you just kind of rotate it up and it hooks to that. This must be a superseded part. As you can see, there's a groove down the middle of this, and it's not very thick. This new one here is a lot beefier, so they must have considered improving this part since it's so common to fail. So hopefully the second time is a charm. Now we're gonna have to do some cleaning in here. Doesn't look too good, but I think that's just from trying too many times. Really, there's nothing wrong with it. I think we can fix everything. But I'm gonna go ahead and take the brush plate off, and we're going to try to take this motor apart and just make sure. I may have to find a set of brushes, so we need to clean it out really good. And the brushes look like they'll probably be okay, but I definitely want to check the bearings, and I want to clean everything really well. And hopefully, now normally you see all this carbon inside here. Really, it should be time for a starter, but I'm going to try to clean all this up. I'm also going to try to clean the commutator really well and the brushes. Then we can put it back together and make sure that everything's good. Alright, I'm going to come clean on this, and you know, sometimes reality bites. The plan was originally, when I realized what was wrong with this, was to find the fork and replace the fork. Initially, that's all that was wrong with this starter. Unfortunately, you know, this car belongs to my son's mom, and if you knew what you were doing, you could get the car to start. It took some time, so we decided to trade vehicles until we fixed this, and that probably wasn't such a good idea. We probably should have rented something or come up with another solution. But at one point, you know, sometimes it takes a few tries to get the car to start, and it just wasn't going to do it. And this is on me. There was nothing wrong with this. I'm pretty confident because the starter ran fine. But we burnt the motor, and that's on me. You know, we just kept trying and trying. Try to let it cool off some, but so what happened is this armature here, some of this expanded from getting hot and made contact with one of the magnets inside. And this here, what they call a yoke, is probably fine. The magnets, I'm sure, are fine. There's a little chip in one, but it's still plenty magnetic, and it's not distorted. This armature is bad. Okay. Surprisingly, the brushes are good. They look fine. Everything needed to be cleaned up. So, still, I'm not going to go buy a starter. Well, not a new one. Okay. So, I found a used starter that is a factory starter, and if there's anything wrong with it, More than likely it has the same problem, that fork. $50. So instead of used parts yard, I'm going to pick this starter up, and you know, if it's good, we may put it in. If it needs a fork, we'll put the fork in it. We already have one. And if there's anything wrong with it, you know, I can take the two apart and build one good one with the best of the best. Really, I just need this armature here. If I were that guy, I could probably separate these winding wires and put it in and let it go, but I'm not going to do that. This really needs to be changed. $50. We're still not buying a new starter for $400. So we have 50 plus the 12, $62. That's not so bad. This is the starter that I got from the salvage yard. It is slightly different, but I believe the bracket is the same. I'm pretty sure this will bolt up. I've also looked at the pinion gear. It's got the same number of teeth. The best I can measure is the same diameter, so it should mesh with the flywheel just like the old one does. The difference is this one, the motor is slightly longer and slightly narrower. Now I don't know what that means for torque, but time is of the essence, and I believe I can make this work. So the first thing I want to do is test this. The second thing I want to do is take it apart and see if the fork is the same, because I know that this is a common problem. And if it is, this one's not broken, but I want to go ahead and change it if it's, you know, not the superseded part. So let's go ahead and test it first. Both of these starters are pretty small, and this jumper cable is pretty large, so this is going to be a little tedious. I'm going to try to grab hold of this thing without shorting it out, and then we'll put the probe on here and run it. It sounds good. As you can see here, I got my work cut out for me. Like I said, getting the starter out of this car could be a whole video. I'm not going to bore you with putting it back in either. Now we all know there's a couple ways to skin a cat. Fortunately for me, I have the magic of video. Oh yeah, that's way easier. Where was that when I was a mechanic? Moment of truth. Bueno, obviously this video didn't go as planned. It's kind of how things work in my world most of the time. I guess the point of it was going to be to change the lever, and everything turned to shit. Like I said, we're practicing making videos, and take it easy. And there's people watching me fucking record a video